Hello and welcome to the 2022 season of the St. Louis Corporate Chess League. My name is Alex Kerford, a financial advisor, captain of Team Edward Jones, and the founder of the St. Louis Corporate Chess League. I want to extend a special welcome to the new companies that are joining our competition this year and say welcome back to the companies that are returning from years in the past. Chess has continued to grow in popularity in the United States and around the world, and it's been no different here in St. Louis. As we continue to see the Corporate Chess League expand, that means greater competition, stronger companies that are going to be playing, as well as more networking opportunities. We have some very exciting things planned for the Corporate Chess League for this year. I'm excited to get to share that with all of you and have fun participating in chess, this game that we all love.
The board is back in play! 2022 spring season starts now!
That is right, everybody. It is time for the new season of the Corporate Chess League. Huge thanks to Alex and Mike for that wonderful intro. Now, my name is Caleb Denby, and I will be your host here tonight. We've got a lot of exciting matchups, a lot of fun going on in this new season. Our first event here is going to be virtual, and you may notice I'm not in my normal studio. Like in the last year, I'm coming to you from my home tonight. This time not because of COVID, but because it is very, very icy outside, and so we're going from home today. But super happy that I can still bring this broadcast to you guys, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun. So without further ado, let me pop over here to our main view. And really quickly, let me just say we have Daugherty and Enterprise back from the previous season, along with Ascension, Bayer, Edward Jones, and Color Art, who I believe is a new addition to the Corporate Chess League, all competing here tonight, trying to get some regular season points, some Grand Prix points, so they can qualify for the coveted playoff positions, where they will be battling out to get their name on that Corporate Chess League board that Mike was showing off there in the intro. So I do believe games are about to get underway, if they haven't already. So to start off with, I want to take a look at the Enterprise versus Daugherty matchup here. We have Kamikaze Knight returning for Enterprise, along with Moneyballin, Kendulum, Big Daddy Jazz, and Nirvan B. Daugherty, I'm seeing some familiar names as well. We've got C-Cell 0603, we have Desrat, we have I Love Legos 2, Ina Dekeva, and Mike Shimweg. So let's see if I can go ahead and follow some of these players. All right, we've got Kamikaze Knight with his game already underway against C-Cell 0603. Let me see if I can pull up Moneyball in here as well. And although those 6 teams appear on our standings, as I'm scrolling through, it looks like we only have 4 full teams competing here tonight, and that is Enterprise and Daugherty in our first matchup. Going on at the same time is actually Ascension and Bayer, so be on the lookout for those 2 teams as well. And I'm not totally sure what this means for Color Art and Edward Jones, but not fielding full teams. I didn't get the full story on that one. And yeah, hello. Thank you everyone for joining me in the chat. You see that Go set? Yeah, I have a nice Go set here behind me, but it's not about Go tonight. It's about the chess. So without further ado, let's see if I can figure out what's going on in these games. Kamikaze Knight leading the way for Enterprise. We have an open Sicilian. Looks like a Bishop C4 Dragon. F3, Queen D2, and this Rookie 8 move. I'm not sure if it's this exact position, but a friend of mine actually struggled against this Rookie 8 move. It's sort of a really cagey move in the Dragon. Definitely want to be aware of. H4 by White is following the normal plans. So yeah, just H4, G4. and knight h5 does not make a lot of sense. So I think this is the pretty classic Yugoslav attack. White expanding on the king side, playing for mate, and black felt like they were under so much pressure that they already sacrificed a piece. So looking good for kamikaze knight. Then after bishop h5, we see the classic exchange sacrifice, opening up the g file here, and I don't think black is going to be able to keep everything together. As we see bishop h6 coming in, the queen will come in to follow with checkmate. So looking very, very good for kamikaze knight right off the bat. And we already have our first result, a draw by repetition between Moneyballin and Desrat. Looks like Moneyballin was trying to play for the win with the pieces on the 7th, and Desrat was having none of it, just goes straight directly for this repetition. So our first result there. First result. Yeah, kamikaze knight, I believe this is John Boyer. Definitely one of the strongest board ones in the entire league. Leading the way for Enterprise. Let's continue on down the list, though. We've got Kendulum on board 3 for Enterprise. Let's see if I can find this one. Yep, Kendulum here, underway against I Love Legos 2. These players playing quickly. A huge problem in these Corporate Chess League events has always been the clock, especially once you get down to this 1500, 1200 type rating. These players not always the best at managing their time in these 10-minute games. It's 10 plus 0. So no extra time, no increments. If you flag when you're up a queen, too bad. Tough luck. Should have played faster in the opening. And what we have here is a pretty classic queen and pawn endgame. So with queens on the board, you might expect that the defending side has some chances to kind of go after the king, distract from the power of having a passed pawn. But that's actually not really the case. Black played a very good move just now. Queen to b2, the idea of defending along this diagonal. And with this diagonal defended, white can't check from the side, can't check from the front, can't check from the diagonals, and the king is powerful enough to guard all of these squares. So there's really no way for white to harass this king. In the meantime, the queen is going to do a very easy job of supporting this pawn down the board. Should be an easy win here for Kendulum. So with that, I'm expecting a win on board 1 for Enterprise and a win on board 3 for Enterprise. They've already got a draw on board 2, so off to a very, very strong start. Let's keep it moving. Go on down to Big Daddy Jazz 64. See what we've got here. Although he doesn't seem to be online. Uh-oh, maybe his opponent is? Maybe Ina Dekeva? No, neither of them are online. Maybe some trouble getting connected here. It is the first round. Let's see. But I do have the final board for the Enterprise against Daugherty matchup. Nirvan B playing for Enterprise. And Mike Shimweg playing for Daugherty. So on this one, it looks like a rook on a8 was just captured. Is that right? What on earth just happened here? Okay, this is something else. This is some kind of chess I'm not familiar with. Mike going for a very non-standard opening here. You know, it's good to control the center, develop your pieces in the normal way. Rook h6, not always great, but it looked like it was going to work out for a moment here. So we did capture that exchange. Bishop b7 is some kind of tactic that I don't know about. And then after queen takes b7, castles, and then takes on b2. So, of course, the queen and rook are in tension here. And so this was missed by black and white on the next turn. And then white realized that this rook was capturable. So Nirvan actually starting to take over the game now. And this looks like checkmate. This looks a lot like checkmate. We might see an early result here on this game. I think both of these players would do well to get some help from their teammates, especially on the opening principles and on just the basics. You got to make sure that your pieces are defended, that they aren't just hanging. Very important stuff. And to my surprise, actually not to my surprise, it looks like Kamikaze Knight did end up winning that first game, as expected. That attack in the Sicilian was just going to be way too strong. And with that, I think Enterprise is really off to a pretty massive lead here. Thus far, it's only the one game, I believe, but let's take a look. How did Black end up doing? Yeah, so as expected, Black was able to escort this pawn all the way down the board. White got a single check, but Black was able to defend the king, and now it's just an extra queen for Black. So Pendulum gonna take this one home as well. And with that, Enterprise is very much in a bad way. But let's stick with it. Let's see what C-Cell can do here against the strong John Boyer. We have an English, early E3, and D4. Okay. So in this opening, Black has given up the dark square bishop for the knights. And in return, this has somewhat fractured White's pawns and made this bishop a little bit harder to develop. But White's not so sad about that always, because this pawn is going to give us a lot of extra support for the D pawn. C5 is an interesting idea by C-Cell. He trades off his doubled pawns, castles the king. So far, so good. And now we see knight A5 by Kamikaze Knight here. So John is really looking to prevent the C pawn from advancing any further. If he can get some kind of setup with bishop E6, maybe bishop C4, maybe knight C4, where he can really effectively blockade this C pawn, then White's going to have a hard time finishing development. This bishop in particular, while it is unopposed, could grow to be kind of uncomfortable sitting on C1 if this knight lands on the C4 square. That being said, I like C-Cell's last move. Queen A4 is challenging both the knight and this C4 square, and I am starting to wonder if White can get away with playing this. I don't think so. So that's why we play bishop A3. If White played C4, I think bishop A6 actually gave White some serious problems. So bishop A3 getting developed. Now queen to D7. Again, it's all about the C4 square here. Black is trying to trade off the queens because White's queen controls this square, and Black's queen did not. So if White were to accept this trade, again, that's going to further weaken White's control over C4. Okay, instead, White moves the pawn to C4, which is good in theory, but bad in practice. Your queen is dead. The queen is dead. Long live the queen. That's unfortunate. C-Cell, I feel like, was playing this game very, very reasonably. Was playing off to a good start, seemed to understand some of the strategy, but the queen hangs will tell the tale for C-Cell here. So with that, let's check back in on board 2. We still have Moneyballin against Desrats. They had that quick draw in the first round. And let's see, Moneyballin, I believe, is the player for Enterprise. Yep. And C-Cell, sorry, not C-Cell, Desrat playing for Daugherty. So what is this position? What is this position? White has more pieces. Does White not have more pieces? One piece, two piece, red piece, blue piece. Yeah, White has more pieces. I figured it out. Black doesn't really have much in exchange for the piece, but for the moment, these knights in particular are a little bit awkwardly placed. They're sort of stepping on each other's toes. You don't really want to have your knights connected like this. You can imagine, like, if the knights were on E3 and E4 instead, or even E3 and F3 instead, they would control a much broader swath of the board. When they're connected like this, they can be a little bit vulnerable. And you see, actually, Moneyballin trying to set up some kind of tactic here, where after E4, this knight would have to move away, and the knight on D2 would be undefended. Now, I'm not sure the tactic even immediately works. White has stuff like Rook E1, taking advantage of this pin, but Moneyballin's head is in the right place. Like, I would go for F5 here. Like, F5, threaten E4, try and get some tactics going, try and get your pawns rolling, and get some counterplay here. Moneyballin also way down on the clock, not where you want to be in this corporate chess league. 10+0 games, they go by fast. They really go by fast. Meanwhile, the results continue to filter in here. I believe Enterprise has all but clinched the match against Daugherty. John Boyer, Kamikaze Knight on board 1, did end up winning both his games, going 2-0. Big Daddy Jazz seems to have won by forfeit against Ina Dekeva, so now we understand why those games weren't getting underway. Big Daddy Jazz was there, ready to connect, Ina Dekeva, perhaps a no-show, unfortunately. And very bad news for Bayer. It looks as though 2 of Bayer's players are no-shows as well. I'm looking at Vindy getting crossed out on the pairing sheet and N. Klein Bear also getting crossed out. I think those are forfeit losses, meaning they were not able to attend the first round. Hopefully some of these players can get connected. Otherwise, it might not be the most competitive night at the Corporate Chess League. Very, very tough to come back if you're giving away free points. Kendulum also winning his second game against I Love Legos 2. And sorry, the board might have stopped updating there for a bit. Let's see what happened. We saw Rookie 8, Rookie 1, H6 was a slightly odd choice. Bishop D4, also a very strange decision. When you're up a piece like this, you don't really need to go for these kinds of complications. Just simple chess is often the best way to go, especially if you are, if you're already winning. You know, complications favor the player with the worst position because once things get complicated, anything can happen. You might lose a piece, your opponent might lose a piece, but you don't really need to win any more pieces. You're already winning. So follow Yasser advice. One of his favorite acronyms is KISS, which stands for keep it simple, stupid. Just keep it simple. And then you can't go wrong. So instead, we are not keeping it simple. We're playing knight takes e5, which I do think loses a piece to a number of different lines. White can play rook takes d4 now. White can take on e5 and then take on d2. Black is just getting a piece back. That's plain and simple. White, of course, is still, I think, to be preferred thanks to this strong c5 pawn. But actually, I'm not even sure our strong c5 pawn is going to be surviving too much longer. Yeah, we have our pick of knights to capture. I like taking this one on g4 because it keeps the pressure against b4 alive. And it also threatens takes on g2. So just a fork. Now rook takes b4 and materials equal. And Desrat not keeping it simple, allowing Moneyballin back into the game, giving him some life. And now it's just an equal endgame. I still think white is going to be a bit better because the white king has a much faster path into the center, especially if black were to trade off these rooks. This king is going to appear on d4 like lightning. But black is sort of pointing out that the black king is going to make it there as well. But again, yeah, f4 now, and white has a really good control over all of these central squares. This is sort of keeping the black king at bay. Although as I'm talking about the beauty of white's position, pawns are starting to fall. So white's going all in now on this c pawn, giving up both the g and the h pawns, but I'm not sure I'm a believer. This black bishop already is controlling too much. Controlling c8 and the c pawn falls. Moneyballin going from losing to I think just clearly winning in a matter of 5 or 10 moves, and honestly like 1 minute. Took a single minute for this position to turn around. If I was white there, I was going to try something tricky like king e4, f5, but I don't think it worked. Even if you get that in, there's bishop b7, bishop g2 to b7 in the end. Not all hope is lost though. If white can trade off some pawns and then sacrifice the knight for the remaining pawns, then it would be a draw. However, with good play, I don't think that ever happens. But not to make fun of these players, but I think that even I might struggle with a minute on the clock to win this position against a really strong player. So I still think anything could happen here. If I wouldn't feel confident winning against Magnus Carlsen, then I'm not confident that these players are going to play it well either. We get knight back to e2. And again, Moneyballin's time starting to tick down. He's at least secured a draw. On chess.com's rules, if you flag and your opponent has just a knight, it is always a draw no matter what. On Lee Chess, sometimes you win, depending on the other material remaining. But on chess.com, that's just a draw. And now king g6, and I think white might be securing this draw. It looks like the pawns are going to end up falling. Looks like there's no way to defend the pawns. So wild back and forth here. Moneyballin not able to convert with so little time on the clock allows White to save at least a half point for his team. By the way, if you're wondering what's at stake in these matches, very weird moves, but all is still okay for White. I would have snatched this pawn on h6 at least 3 times by now, but that's okay. That's all right. It's not going anywhere unless you play knight f5. Knight f5, of course, horrible move because the bishop could pin. And finally, finally the pawn has been captured. I can breathe a little bit easier now. We'll just bring our king back here, bring the knight back to g3. This game is over. Big draw. I'm confident that Desrat can figure this one out. Yeah, just bring the knight to g3. Now you can pass in too many squares. It's impossible for black to control all, 6 squares that the knight can move to. So the knight will always have a square, and then it can always come back to g3. No way for black to take over the dark square. So it's just going to be a clear draw. But what was I saying? What are these players playing for? So of course they are competing for Grand Prix points. The 4 teams with the most Grand Prix points at the end of the season will advance to the playoffs. So how do you score Grand Prix points? Well, if you win the head-to-head team match, then you get 10 points awarded to your Grand Prix score. And by 10, I mean 20. You get 20 points awarded to your Grand Prix score. Now, in addition to that, you also get your individual match scores. So, for example, John Boyer went 2-0 against C-Cell, so that's another 2 Grand Prix points for Enterprise, and unfortunately 0 for Daugherty from that head-to-head matchup. Now, Moneyballin and Desrat have just officially split 1-1, so that is 1 point towards the Grand Prix score for each team. Kendulum beat I Love Legos 2-0, so that's 2 more points for Enterprise, and so on and so forth. So every single game matters for these points, but of course the 20-point bonus for winning the match going to be the most important here tonight. So with that, this game is a draw. We have just 1 game remaining in this matchup between Enterprise and Daugherty. That's going to be between Nirvan B and Mike Shimweg again, 2 of the craziest players we've seen in the Corporate Chess League so far. So what's going on here? So Nirvan B does seem to understand some more principles than his opponent Mike. But we saw Mike have some opportunities in the last game. There were some pieces hung. There was some dangers for Nirvan. So despite the lack of opening knowledge, Mike is a force to be reckoned with, at least in this matchup. I'm half expecting black to take on f2 next, and neither player to realize that this knight defends on f2. But maybe I am selling these players short. Okay, Mike does notice the threat to f2, so he defends with the rook. Again, it was already defended once with the knight on h3, but defends with the rook as well. Robster says, no mask, of course. Tonight I am coming to you from the comfort of my home rather than in front of a live audience, so no need for the mask tonight. No need for the mask tonight. Home, because I got snowed in. Mentioned it at the top of the show, but the roads are looking pretty rough out there, so couldn't make it into the chess club for today. Okay, bishop takes f2 played anyways. This is attacked 3 times now, defended only once, so Mike can and should go ahead and capture this bishop. He does so with the rook. I would have preferred the knight. You, of course, want to lose the piece that is less valuable, knight being worth 3, rook being worth 5. So now black captures 5 points of material, whereas if you were capturing a knight, you would only capture 3 points of material. Would have been a little bit better. And I think this is the final game in the round. We do actually have one more that we can take a look at in the Ascension Bayer matchup. That's going to be between Davinators 2 and NM somebody else. Let's find out here. Although they do not seem to be playing their second game. I think this is the only game that's in progress at this moment between between Nirvan B and Mike Shimweg. So once this one wraps up, then we will be on to round 2. So yeah, this is the last one. It looks like David Nader's final game against NMC Jin just wrapped up. They split 1-1. So this is it. This is our final game of the match. And to give some more details, let's see where our standings are at right now. I think this is accurate. So Enterprise scoring 8 points up against Daugherty. Daugherty, did they only get 1 point? Is that true? They did only score 1 point so far, but Mike fighting for that second point here in this round. Meanwhile, Ascension scoring 6 points against Bayer. 4 of those points I think were forfeit wins. Bayer getting 2 points with their 2 players that did manage to play. And I'm not sure why we're giving Color Art 2 points and Edward Jones 1 point. So I think that perhaps these players could not field full teams for the first round here. So they are playing extra matches. So I do see Alex Kerford there playing for Edward Jones as an individual, scoring 1 point. And then I believe Gary Mindel must be playing for Color Art in the extra matches as well, getting 2 points for Color Art. So that's how those points appeared. So of course, as I mentioned, those are the board points, but they are about to get 20 extra points if you are Ascension or Enterprise. And now those 20 points are for winning the first match. And I'm being told Alex's game is still going. Let's peek in on that as well. Looks like they're in a bit of time pressure. So Alex fighting for that second point for Edward Jones. With the white pieces here, he is up a full piece and a number of pawns, but down to 34 seconds. So this game could still have some intrigue. Okay, bishop f6. This looks like a desirable move because it puts the bishop on a square where it's defended. But actually now, g6 is going to be hard to attain because g6 will always leave this bishop behind so long as black's king is here to provide some pressure. I don't really like king e6. It puts your king opposite this rook, giving yourself some opportunities to hang some tactics. But what's important above all else here is just moving quickly, of course. Black needs to keep the pressure on the clock. Given enough time, Alex is going to win this position 100 times out of 100. So you have to really pressure the clock. Make sure you give him just enough problems that he has to use his remaining 19 seconds solving those problems and not checkmating your king. Yeah, king g4, not in love with this. I think we needed to leave the king on f5 to stop this g6 idea and then go hunting with the rook. All right, we're not going to talk about that. It's time pressure. Things get missed. Rook a3, b4, rook b3 now. I like this. We are snagging this pawn. We're forcing some awkward move. Okay. But yeah, rook b4 is too much. After bishop to e7, white's going to see that one. White's going to see that one. Okay, Alex will make a queen now and has 7 seconds left to checkmate. Can he do it? Here comes the third queen. Here comes the rook or the queen. Alex wins by checkmate, getting that second point for Edward Jones. All right, peeking back in here, let's see what's going on. This f2 sacrifice seems to have paid off because Mike did not recapture on f2. He had 2 different ways to do it, but did not find either one. That allowed Nirvan to sort of take over. He captures on g3 now, swings over queen b3, and this is where the position currently stands. Queen c2, that's going to be good enough, I think. Black going for the classic idea of collecting all the pieces rather than trying to just checkmate by force. Although this is a checkmating threat if Mike does not see that this knight is capturable on h3 here. So checkmate is being threatened. Look out. Look out, Mike. Queen e3. Okay, that does allow the checkmate. Will Nirvan play it? He will. And with that, our first round comes to a close. So that's going to give 1 more point over to Enterprise, I believe. That's going to bring their total up to 9, which plus 20 is going to be 29 points in the first round That's going to be a pretty sizable lead for Enterprise. It's going to be tough to catch up there. Meanwhile, Ascension, with a very good first round as well, will end with 26 after round 1, heading into round 2. So what does round 2 look like? We've got Bayer up against Enterprise and Ascension up against Daugherty. So the clash of the Titans, Ascension and Enterprise at the top of the leaderboard, will not happen tonight. So we'll see which of these teams is able to extend their lead and which of these teams ends up getting caught, perhaps. Could get caught. Am I home? I am at home. I've mentioned it, I think, once or twice. But we got snowed in here in St. Louis for today, so I'm happy that I can still bring you guys this coverage from the comfort of my living room, but could not make it into the studio today. Could not make it into the studio. So we'll give the players just a few moments here to get ready for this second round to get underway. To give you the head-to-head matchups, Bayer versus Enterprise. That's going to look like Vindy on board 1 against Kamikaze Knight. Now, Vindy did not show up for the first round here, so hopefully he is just running late and can attend for round 2. Otherwise, going to be a tall hill to climb for Bayer. Board 2 is going to be Cross to PJ against Moneyballin'. Board 3 is N Bear against Kendulum. And on board 4, we've got NMC Jin against Big Daddy Jazz, 64. We also have Ascension squaring off against Daugherty, which I believe is the match that I want to follow. I think that one will be a little bit more competitive. Is going to be Maurice GP against C-Cell on board 1. We're going to see S. Gilmore 999 up against Desrat. Desrat, I believe, the only scoring player for Daugherty thus far. They had a tough first round. So Desrat going to try and keep it up for his team. We've got Oak Ave against I Love Legos 2 on board 3. David Naders against Ina Dekeva. Ina Dekeva also was a no-show for round 1. And Eberlemd, D, something like that, is up against Mike Shimweg on board 5. And I hear the sound of chess moves being played, which makes me think we are off and rolling. Alex Kerford now is playing Gary Mindel, 66. So this is essentially the Edward Jones versus Color Art match. I think both of these teams were only able to field one player tonight, so it won't count for that 20-point match score bonus for winning a match, but it will count for board points. So bragging rights at stake here. Edward Jones versus Color Art, sort of a preview for matches to come. And we also have this game underway for Moneyballin' versus Crosta PJ. So this one is part of the Bayer Enterprise matchup. Let's just take a look here, see how we're doing. E4, Knight F6. We have an Alekhine with Knight C3 and then D5. I'm not at all familiar with what's going on here. And that's a free pawn for Moneyballin'. That's just an extra pawn. A little conservative here, brings the knight back to D6, but an extra pawn is an extra pawn. All right, let's actually stick with Alex here, see how he's doing as well. We have D4, E5. Oh my goodness, the England strikes again. White too afraid to take the pawn on E5, just defends, and now we have some kind of exchange French. What a world we're living in. Actually, a very good position for White thus far. Very good position. I don't love what Alex did with this bishop here. It does induce these pawns to move forward, but I'm not sure that White is so unhappy about that. Black now, though, looking to do some very nasty things to White's position. He's going to drop this bishop back in, threaten checkmate here, and try and push a little bit harder, try and give White some problems. Wow, Webster with some strong words for Alex. In fairness, I'm not sure this is the position you expect to get after you play the England, so Alex might just be a little bit out of his depth here. Not totally sure what to do. But he, again, I do think this is a very nice repositioning for him. He's bringing this bishop back into the game and getting the pieces out one way or the other. might look to play something like a5 as well, trying to actually make use of this b4 pawn. Yeah, g3 is a little bit unfortunate for whites. It does allow you this opportunity to play something like bishop f4. It's going to contest this bishop on c7. This is, quote-unquote, black's good bishop, so he might not be unhappy about getting that piece off the board. However, of course, this does come with some weaknesses around the king. White's just going to have to be very cognizant of those. Going to have to find a clever way to actually escape from this annoying pin on the, whatever diagonal this is, the d1 h5 diagonal, I guess you could say. So if I'm white, I'm probably looking to play bishop f4, take this bishop off the board, and then I want to play king g2, h3, and maybe even g4. And my idea is, without the dark square bishop, I'm not as worried about weakening this diagonal so much, and if I can force this bishop to unpin my knight, I want to play like knight e5, enjoy some extra space in the position, and maybe I get to survive with my weaknesses, since I've traded off a couple minor pieces. But problems to solve for white, not so many problems to solve for black, if I'm entirely honest. All black has to do here is finish development and contest the E file. Now that can be easier said than done. Knight bd7 would lose a piece to bishop f4, so you know, somewhat there are some problems, I suppose. It's a little bit awkward to get this final piece into the game. Maybe that's why we see a5. Maybe he's looking at something like knight a6 even. Bishop takes f6. I hate this move. I think this move might just lose by force. It brings black's queen into the attack on this knight on f3. King g2 is forced now. And again, it leaves this bishop now completely unopposed. Giving up your bishops for knights unprovoked is more often than not going to be very, very bad. Even in the Nimzo Indian, black usually waits for white to play something like a3, putting the question to the bishop before snapping that knight off on c3. Bishops are good. You know, knights are pieces, but like bishops are good pieces. You don't want to be giving them away like that for free. Definitely not for free. So Gary Mindel giving himself a tough task now. And are the other games going? Am I just not following the people I need to be following? This could be. Actually, this very much could be. Let's see what we can do. Try and follow Maurice GP. And these games are going. It's just that the Bayer Enterprise match has not... They only have one game going. Very strange. Okay, so S. Gilmore, 999 is also playing against Desrats. We've got Oak Ave on board 3. We've got David Naders, who is not playing, and Eberlem or something, Eberlem D on the last board. Okay, these games are all underway. And where we will leave this game is with queen takes f3. Gonna be a tough... Is it gonna be tough? It's gonna be at least a little bit tough for white to escape from this one. If you take on c7, I can take on d3. But I guess bishop e2 might be saving the day here. For white, you have to move the queen, and then I can take, and then I can take. Okay, none of that gets found. Now I am just gonna take here and be up a piece. Alex can find that. Let us take a look at this Ascension versus Daugherty matchup. So we're looking, I believe, from Ascension's perspective here. We've got Maurice GP versus C-Cell on board 1. Maurice GP playing for Ascension. And a fairly level position. Black has an extra pawn, but white does have this super strong bishop against the knight. So... some chances for both sides, I would say, right? As soon as you try to start pushing these pawns, then this bishop is going to come even more to life on this super long diagonal. Great diagonal for the bishop, so it's tough to make use of this extra pawn, at least yet. Black, of course, should be doing better with the extra pawn, but it could very, very quickly actually turn around if some of these pawns start to drop off the board. Yeah, for example, queen to b3, asking you how do you intend to defend this pawn on b7. And I don't have the answers. I guess rook a7 is one way to go about it. But rook a7, maybe not the most comfortable. Yeah, I think it's got to be rook a7 here. You don't really want to play something like rook eb8. You would maybe rather double this rook onto the a8 square. When in doubt, you don't want to go passive in these kinds of positions. Being an active, going for active counterplay instead of passive defense is almost always going to be better. And again, Cecil doing a good job here of just immobilizing these pawns. You can't really touch either of these pawns, or else both the bishop and the major pieces are immediately capturing your guys. So Maurice with problems to solve here. He does play rook a to b8. I think that's the worst of the options to defend this pawn. If you are going to be passive with the other rook. You want to leave this guy on the active a file where he can pressure this a pawn. Now, no active play at all for black, and I think with white here, I'm really seriously considering a4, a5, a6, and Cecil does start to go for it. Why do I want to play a4, a5, a6? Well, I want to break down the defender of this c6 pawn, get my rooks into the game, and once c6 falls, then again, this bishop's just going to be monstrous on the long diagonal. We'll see if Cecil has the guts to go through it, though. It's one thing to play a4, a5. It's another thing to play a6 as a pawn sacrifice. Yeah, now knight to c7 is good. It does prevent a6 because I would capture with the knight, leaving everything sort of together in my position, at least for the moment. This also offers the queen trade. I'm expecting queen b6. Makes a lot of sense to me. Now if knight d5, maybe white goes back. Maybe queen c5 is an improvement for white. I think queen c5 makes sense. I don't think we want to capture this knight ever on d5. Like I said, the bishop's a monster. We don't want to give up our best minor piece. Our only minor piece in this case, but it's still a very, very good one. So queen c5 instead renews the threat of a6. And if rook a8, now I think we bring one of the rooks to the b file, and we can continue with active counterplay. Yeah, rook b1. I love what Cecil's doing here. Keeping the balance, keeping the threats up. And the question's on Maurice. He brings the rook back to b8. Again, I don't love going passive in these positions. The donations go to me or to St. Louis. I believe we are currently fundraising for our scholastics programs. So if you think that the mission of spreading chess is an important one, that is where the money goes. Putting chess in schools, teaching more kids how to play the game. So very worthy cause, even if it doesn't go into my pocket. Maybe that's a more worthy cause, at least in some people's opinion, but give it to the kids. Give it to the kids. Queen takes e7, and this is now going to be tactically good for white. a6 is coming. This rook is now pinned on the b file, and I see absolutely no way to defend this b pawn. You can move it, but then white's going to switch gears, going to come over to the c file, and the bishop again is very well placed, controlling the queening square for this pawn once these things get disrupted. But it is going to come down to specifics here. Okay, well this is a blunder. Rooks move sideways. Yeah, so strong defense from white so far, but then I'm not sure why we faltered at the last moment here. We could have gone for bishop takes d5 without losing our a pawn, so I definitely would have preferred that. Now it's a 5 versus 4. So you've probably heard of 4 versus 3 endgames. You've maybe heard of 3 versus 2 endgames, but 5 versus 4 is tough. So the general wisdom here is that as you keep adding on those extra pairs of pawns, it gets harder and harder to draw. So 4 versus 3 should be a more or less trivial draw. 3 versus 2, very trivial draw. But 5 versus 4, if black knows what they're doing here, they could make it somewhat difficult for white to hold. That being said, this is not an endgame I've studied in depth, so I have nothing bad to say if these players misplay this, because I don't even know what misplaying this looks like, to be honest. We get rook to a6. I like what white's doing with this rook. In general, in these endgames, you want the rook far away on the side where it can deliver annoying lateral checks and can attack these pawns also from the side. Black does seem to be handling things pretty well. just slowly but surely expanding. Now black should probably do the same thing that I just advised white to do, which is bring this rook off to the side where it can attack and harass the white king. White did not leave himself with much shelter. Instead we get e4, and now e takes f3. And these were some slightly strange decisions by both sides. Slightly strange. Okay, it looks like white is corralling the f3 pawn, but again, black is able to get active. Okay, way too close. The rooks are long-range pieces. You want to make use of that power to check far from the side. Now, rook c3 check is never possible, but rook a3 check would have been. You know, long-range pieces. Get them far away from the kings where they cannot be harassed. And very, very interesting endgame now. Now my heart's telling me this one should actually be winning with good play. The e3 pawn is going to be way too weak. And again, if we can just get this rook out to the side, I think that's what's going to give white the most problems. e4 is also going to be possible now. I don't love h6, g5. Again, with every pawn that gets traded, it's going to be closer to a draw. We absolutely need this rook over here. Okay, Maurice finds it. Brings the rook out to the side, finally. Now check, king e4, and white has serious problems. So I think white needs to do the exact same thing. Come to b2. Again, c2 is going to be way too close. We needed to be on b2, so after king e4, we can deliver the check from the side, push the black king back. Now white is going to be lost, and c-cell finds it, but finds it a move too late. So if you learn one thing from these endgames, check from the side from a distance. The rooks are long-range pieces. Don't go so close. They're not effective up close against the king. Now this is going to be a 2 versus 0. Should be a pretty clean win for Maurice if he's able to solve a few final problems here. I like the rook on the second. I would go over to a2 or h2. Again, far away as possible from the king. Rook a2, I love it. We can block this check with d4. And now there's no way to prevent the king from going king e3 or just f2, f1 as well. So do you see how many turns white had to spend to attack this rook a single time? That's why long-range pieces are good, farther away from the king. And with f1 queen coming next, we do see c-cell resigning. Pretty instructive rook endgame there, even if it wasn't played to perfection. Okay, so we've got a quick 1-0 for Maurice. Oak Ave did win his first game against I Love Legos 2, and it looks like Desrat against S. Gilmore, they are also in their second game, also win for S. Gilmore. So that is 3 quick points for Ascension in that first round. Let's see how Iberlim, I'm gonna need some help on pronouncing that one. Let's see how they're doing against each other. Mike versus Iberlim. We have a position that I think is best described as totally random. This looks like someone got a handful of chess pieces, tossed them up in the air, and they sort of fell on the chessboard like this. So I have no idea what's going on. I just need to count pieces. Okay, black has an extra bishop. White has 2 extra pawns for it. And also this king is on h4. These pawns look somewhat threatening. And none of black's pieces are really working together at all. They're all sort of just scattered randomly, like I said. So white's pieces a little bit more harmonious, but black does have more of them. So I think black should be doing well here, even though these pawns look somewhat scary. A little bit tough here. Yeah, Dorsa's doing great. The club did close yesterday, so her classes yesterday did not get streamed. Also, we are running low on stream operators, I believe. So she's been teaching classes at the club, but they just haven't always made it to the internet. But she should be back next week, if all goes well. Okay, rook g8 is going to blunder a rook. Iberlim can just capture that with the knights. Will they find it? Knight takes rook. Knight takes rook. I believe in Eber. I believe. Take the rook. Believe in you. Take the rook. No, the rook will not be captured today. Rook f4 instead. Okay. I can't watch this game. Okay. What's going on here? Oak Ave had a quick win in the first round against I Love Legos 2. I Love Legos 2 trying to get some revenge now, doing so with a very scary looking pawn on c6. Queen a6 to b7 is a big boy threat. That's serious. Don't take that one lightly. That being said, I'm not sure I love this last move, bishop d7. That would allow rook takes d7. Perhaps when after takes back, king b7. It actually still looks very, very awkward for black to deal with, to be honest. So maybe bishop d7 is okay. I would have preferred just queen a6. Just leave this bishop hanging on g4. And then just go, knight d5, coming into c7. Also bring this rook over slowly but surely. It's going to give black some problems. Yeah, so rook d8, knight d5, but now this can be captured. This can be captured here. Can and should be captured. And I think black might have survived the brunt of the attack. Now, white is actually up a piece in this position, so it's not all roses yet. Okay, queen f7 is going to allow white to capture this with check. I'm not sure why this was allowed. We also might have mate. We can check. The king goes back to a8, and we take this rook. And yeah, then we win, and queen c8 is mate. So queen c6 is forced checkmate for I Love Legos 2. Will he find it, or will he succumb to the temptation of taking this pawn with check in one turn? Will he succumb to the temptation? All right, we've got someone on Team Bayer. It's not been a great night for Bayer so far, but let's see how they're doing today against Enterprise. Yeah, I think Bayer had 2 no-shows, unfortunately. So tough to win your match when half your team is missing. But Krasta PJ and NMC Jin both putting in the work, fighting it out for Bayer, getting points where they can. Yeah, knight c7 was played. I Love Legos 2 not able to find that forced checkmating sequence. I think we still have forced checkmate probably after queen a6, queen a7, rook c1. But I'm not going to expect anybody to find that. Rook c1 is a classy move. Leaves this knight on c7, leaves this queen a6 threat alive, and casts a little bit of a mating net. Some mating net ideas here for I Love Legos 2. That's a classy move. Queen c6 also threatened and is probably mate in 2. Maybe not quite 2, but mate in a few. So queen c6 check. It's found. It is found. Now, no matter where the king goes, knight a6 check is devastating. Absolutely devastating. Actually, queen a8 is mate in 1, no matter where the king goes. We don't even need knight a6. We have queen a8. So what a find by I Love Legos 2. He missed the forced sequence, but then recovered with this nice rook c1 move. Again, putting black in a mating net, and immediately queen a8. I Love Legos 2 getting it done, scoring the first point for Daugherty in this match against Ascension. It looks like Mike did end up beating Iberlim, so with a surprise checkmate on the side of the board. I'm not sure anybody saw that coming. Rook h3 checkmate, and this king has absolutely nowhere to go. So Mike picks up his first point of the Corporate Chess League, and the first point for Daugherty. That brings their score now to 2 against Ascension. And what else do we have? Let's see. Let's check back in on this top board here. We've got game number 2 for Maurice GP against C-Cell, and a rook has just been captured. A queen has just been promoted, and it looks as if C-Cell again is going to be in a bad way here. Maurice, with the extra rook, should be able to win this game. That being said, he's running a little bit low on pawns, and black does have a pawn on b2. It's theoretically possible to mess this up, but now after bishop b2, attacking the pinned bishop, this is over now. No pieces left on the board for black. All you can hope for is stalemate. That's going to get it done for Maurice. We also have a second win for S. Gilmore over Desrats. Looks like resignation here after knight e5. It's a strange moment to resign. I'm not sure. Oh, okay. Checkmate in 1 was threatened, and then knight e5 was played, and then Desrat realized that they didn't defend the mate in 1. Not such a strange moment to resign after all. Me personally, I would never resign here. I would, hope against hope that I just confused my opponent too much, and they didn't see that they had threatened mate. But Desrats perhaps does the embarrassment resigning, which, you can't really blame anybody for. We've all been there, just resigning out of embarrassment. And with that, we only have one game left in the Ascension versus Daugherty matchup. It's going to be down to Eberlim against Mike. Can Eberlim get his revenge, defeat Mike Shimweg? Or will Mike get his first sweep of the match? If you are keeping track of the total scores, Enterprise is going to win their match against Bayer, giving them 20 more Grand Prix points. And Ascension has clinched the match against Daugherty, so they will also get that 20-point bonus for winning the team match. I believe there are a couple games still left. We have Money Ballin' against Crasta PJ happening up here. Ooh, in a wild position. We'll stick with this one. And I do think Big Daddy Jazz did end up playing in this round as well. Yeah, we've got him against NMC Jin. And then I believe that's all we have remaining. Just 3 games left for tonight in the Corporate Chess League. Resigning limits the public humiliation. Fair enough. Fair enough. Again, we've all been there. Even the private humiliation is sometimes enough to resign. I believe in other games they call it the shame concede. I think this is like some Hearthstone term that I've heard Peter Svidler throw around. And, fair enough. Sometimes you take the minus EV just to save your mental health. In this case, Moneyballin' putting on a clinic here. Sure, yes, he is up a piece, but look at how these knights dominate literally every piece on the board for black. This knight is keeping this bishop stuck on a8 and controlling this pawn on e6. This knight stopping the rooks from coming to the b file or the f file, and the pawn and the knight together totally hampering black's major pieces down the center of the board. These 3 pieces alone are keeping back like 25 points of material for black. That's absolutely wild. Black does get a queen trade-off, but now it's at too great of a cost. White is going to cash in here, get this knight, give up this knight for the rook, and yeah, rook e5, any number of things. What a position Moneyballin' got there. That is domination if I've ever seen it. Moneyballin' just activating his extra rook now, and once this rook comes into the game, that will be GG. So why don't we check in over here with Big Daddy Jazz against NMC Jin. Not sure how I meant to pronounce those 3 consonants all in a row. I'm going to go with NMC. Maybe it's Namikjin. I don't know. And white is going to be up in exchange here. It looks like NMC Jin did beat Big Daddy Jazz in the first round with a 400-point upset, but Mr. Jazz does seem to be on the better side of things this time. Extra exchange. This knight is actually kind of trapped on b3. Tough to evacuate this knight here. Maybe you go rook a2, hoping for knight d2. But the second the knight lands on d2, rook e2 comes on the board, and you're pinned. So looks like pretty smooth sailing here for Mr. Jazz. And with that, I think this game is about to end. Cross to PJ down to 18 seconds. So we'll stick with this to see the brutal finish. It looks like Moneyballin' trying to find a checkmate here, understandably. B3 check doesn't quite do it. There's king b4. Rook a4 check allows king b5. Maybe, yeah, this looks like the fastest. We go rook a4, king b5, rook d3 to b3, and that's the end of the game. I guess king d5 was a reason to not go for that, but king d5, I mean. Obviously, it's all a little academic. Doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter in the end. Yeah, anything here, the check is good enough. Extra queen is coming. This bishop is still so sad. So sad. And the win on time, and that leaves us with just 2 games remaining. Okay, let's see what happened here. Looks like white did pick up this pawn on b5, but in return, black did manage to get this knight back into the game. If I am Big Daddy Jazz's coach here, I'm telling him, just take the time out of your busy schedule, play a move like h3, because I'm not interested in seeing you give up free points due to, brain slips where you just happen to blunder back rank checkmate. It's okay. Just take the time, defend your king. Nobody's perfect. Everybody hangs back rank mate sometimes, so just don't let it be you. Don't let it be you when you are this winning. That being said, black doing a good job here of not giving white enough time to do that. So rook b6, rook d8. I'm not sure which the better one was to defend this d pawn, but we do see rook b6. Yeah, there was a big upset in the first round there, Smirky. Big upset. NM Jin did defeat Mr. Jazz, as I've started calling him. Okay, finally g3. We are not going to see back rank mate get hung by white in this game. Now the question is he going to be able to convert this exchange up position? It shouldn't be the hardest conversion in the world, but it can be kind of tough. Again, rook's long-range pieces. In all these endgames, you want to be using them from the side to challenge your opponent's king, challenge your opponent's remaining pawns. And in this case, black did a good job of getting behind the passed pawn, so we can't really do that effectively. So that's when you want to get active, get to the side of these pawns, and start making your own threats. So rook a7. I love rook a1. I want to see rook a7 next. And even d7 starts to become a threat. Rook b to b7 might be a threat. Start trying to take these guys. Lots of options here for white. You can also try to activate the king, but it can be a little bit tough with both the knight and the rook left on the board. Your king is going to get a little bit harassed, checked around a bit, especially because black's pieces are on very stable squares. Yeah, here I'd be tempted just to play rook a7. I don't really mind giving up my d-pawn if it means I get to trade off my opponent's rook. In general, when you're in exchange up, just the pure rook versus minor piece is a lot easier to handle than two rooks versus a rook and a minor piece. Your two rooks kind of step on each other's toes sometimes. They perform the same tasks, whereas the minor piece is able to sort of work around the rook. Whether that's a bishop or a knight, the minor piece is able to sort of cover the squares that the rook cannot. Whereas, of course, when you have two of the same piece, they do all the same things. Okay, white gave rook e1 check instead. White really concerned with losing this pawn, so he's going to give this check, make sure that pawn stays alive. A quick knight f8 now is going to allow this rook into e7 if white wants. It would allow rook takes d6, but again, I don't really mind giving up this pawn if it means I can simplify. Rook b7 again would be very strong. Yes, so white finally understands that you do not need to keep this d pawn to win the game. You just need to get active and just start capturing everything your opponent has. So rook b7, great move, and I don't see the way out now for black. If you try rook f5, I just take it, I go d7. You're going to have to give up your knight for my pawn, and I will win the game pretty easily. If you don't play rook f5, then I'm taking with one of these pieces. Like if knight e6, I probably take this way. If anything else, I probably take this way, target your knight, and you're going to have a very difficult time explaining how you're going to save any of your pieces. Very, very difficult. Mr. Jazz also got a little bit low on the clock for my liking, but 2 minutes left is going to be plenty of time to put this one away, I think. Yeah, so rook takes d6 does allow white to just win this knight by force. So it's now a full extra rook for Big Daddy Jazz. And now we can go rook f6, trade off black's last piece. And with a rook to the good, I trust that this will end in white's favor. Although, outside stalemate chances, this is actually going to be mate. If you play h6, check over checkmate, this is going to work the exact same way as long as white can find it. Check and mate. Check and mate. Checkmate. Check. Check. That's not check. Dangerous. One legal move left for black. We can take it. And we can give another check. What you don't want to do is... Okay, I guess there's no real way to blunder stalemate here, but yeah, rook f5 is good enough. Okay, and we'll get there one way or the other. Missed the mate in 2, but you'll still get there, I believe. Okay, that leaves us with just this game remaining, assuming Big Daddy Jazz can finish that one off. We have Mike with the white pieces here in some trouble, down a full piece with a very symmetrical looking pawn structure of unmoved pawns, but he's also active. His rook is active. He's capturing pawns. He's still fighting. And the onus is going to be on black here to figure out how to convert. Of course, I want to take this pawn, threaten checkmate, but will Mike give us time? No, he won't. Challenges this knight, and it's missed. It's missed by Eber. Okay, down to just the rook endgame then. And this one, of course, should be a draw with good play, but there is some danger, I think, for black still. For example, let's say king g5, rook over, maybe to a4, trying to defend this pawn. Ooh, and this is actually quite nasty, quite nasty. If king g2, you lose to h3, king g3, king g5. No way, no you don't. You lose to king g5 first. King g5 first. Oh my god, that was actually crazy. That was actually insane. If you play king g5 here, you have to save your rook, and then I go h3 check, king g3, rook g1 is mate. Unstoppable. King g5 wins a rook in this position. Absolutely crazy. h3 first is not going to be the same, because now after king g5, you do have to worry about rook takes g4. But wow, crazy forced win out of nowhere. This is some puzzle rush stuff. King g5 here just wins the game. Absolutely bonkers. Absolutely wild. Now we do get f5, and white is still going to have to be very, very careful about not getting this king stuck. But I do think it's savable now for white with good play. Maybe we just play f3 right away. Okay, that was not an ideal move. Neither was that. Okay. This rook could be captured, and now after check, this rook can be defended. So, not great stuff there, those past couple moves, but happens to the best of us. Now after rook to g2, I think it's actually white who's trying to win with rook g5 and rook takes g4. This a pawn is still alive. Should be, I mean, black should never be losing, but black's no longer trying to win, I think. No longer trying to win. Let's see what Eber can come up with here. He does play rook g2, but again, rook g5 and rook takes g4 is going to be good enough for whites. And, you know, I won't use the word unlosable, but it'll look good. It'll look good for white. It'll definitely look good. By the way, Big Daddy Jazz did end up converting that game against NM Jin as expected. And this is, in fact, the final game of the round. After this, we will call it quits for tonight on the Corporate Chess League. Some really fun games, though. I had a lot of fun going over these ones. All right, let's see what we got. King e5 is white's choice. Okay, so white was worried about losing this f-pawn, found this unique idea to defend, keep the rook under control. But of course, much, much better was to take the g-pawn. Now g3 is psycho. Should just take this pawn on h2, and then I think black is winning. After g3, it can be captured. H takes g, also psycho. Now this is a queen, and that's not gonna be stoppable. That queen is gonna get there. It's gonna get there. Not much else to say. You have one trick. You can go rook f6 check. Hope against hope that your opponent chooses the h5 square. Then you go rook f8, rook h8. But this is not found. And now that's an extra queen. It's an extra queen for Eber. So Mike, against all the odds, was able to save his position. But then at the end of the day, black was still able to find his way through. Okay, rook g8 now. Outside chances here. Very outside chances here. Rook g8. Threaten the skewer. We can threaten the skewer. Rook h4 is not going to be enough. Black would take. Okay, Mike's greedy. Mike's a greedy guy. He wants back rank checkmate. Or side rank checkmate. We saw him swindle his first game with a similar checkmate. Now going for the same thing here, but it's not going to pay off. Rook f2 is check. Now black can trade off white's last remaining piece, and we will get to see the queen versus king technique. Or maybe not. Maybe black will just keep that piece on. Okay, rook h4, and we get to see the rook versus king technique. Now, Mike doesn't go for this either. Weird squares that black is choosing for the king, but so far it has not hurt black at all, and pawns do not move backwards, so that rook is free. Okay, we get queen b1 instead. Queen b1 instead. This type of blindness is not exclusive to lower rated players, by the way. On empty boards like this, where your brain can't immediately register which way the pawns are moving, I think it's very easy to think that that rook is defended. So, not going to make too much fun here. I've made this mistake myself, to be honest with you. When the board's entirely empty like this, your brain just has no reference point for like which way the pawns are moving. It can actually be quite difficult. Like, my brain right now is telling me that white is trying to go here in queen, but it's obviously not how the pieces move. So, it's just too tough. Okay. It looks like we might not have to see any kind of technique here because Mike is down to 12 seconds and counting. So, might just be a loss on the clock, although there is mate in a few here. Queen to e2, I think, is the fastest to follow this up with queen g2 coming. That's assuming king g1 gets played. If king f1 gets played, then this is mate 1. But none of that. Instead, black wins by timeout. Okay, and with that, that is the final game of this first round of the Corporate Chess League. So, first night of the Corporate Chess League. Of course, we had 2 rounds. So, let's take a look at the standings here and see where that leaves us. I'm actually just going to, on the fly here, blow these up a little bit. Let's see what we're working with. We've got Enterprise scoring 18 board points. Now, if my understanding is correct, that's going to be plus 40 points for winning both of their matches. A match win gets your team 20 extra points. So that's going to put them at a staggering 58 points after the first night. Ascension also winning both of their matches, not far behind with 54 points. That's 14 board points plus 40 points for winning both their matches. Edward Jones did not field a full team here tonight, so the 4 board points scored by Alex Kerford are all they are walking away with. Bayer and Daugherty both able to put up 3 points against the strong Enterprise and Ascension teams. And then Color Art, again, also only fielding a single player who did get 2 points for their team to start off the season. So I had a lot of fun here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed following along these games with me. If you did, be sure to tune in. I think we're going to be back here in another couple Thursdays. So not next Thursday, but Thursday, March 10th, I believe we should be back. Unless it is actually Thursday, March 3rd. I could be wrong on this. Maybe somebody in the chat will help me out. But just stay tuned for more Corporate Chess League events. I love covering these games. It's fun to take a look at how some players slightly lower rated than myself play the game of chess, and I love giving my insights where I can. So huge thank you to all of you for watching. Thank you to the players for competing in the Corporate Chess League. I love these events. Always fun to meet up with these guys in person as well. I think we will be back in person a little bit later in the season as well, which is going to be really, really exciting. So stay tuned, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. As always, my name is Caleb Denby, and I will see you next time.